Good evening, everyone. We'll get started in just a minute. I think people are still trickling into the webinar. So once it seems like we have a healthy number or that it's tailoring off, we'll go ahead and get started. But thank you all and welcome for joining us. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'd like to welcome you all to tonight's college admission workshop on the college application essay. And we are joined today by Sarah Bombard from Lehigh University and Deb Ryan from Empowered Triangle Tutoring. And so I'm going to go ahead and let the experts take it away. And so welcome and thank you for joining us, and the floor is all yours.
Yay, thank you so much. Sarah, do you want to introduce yourself and just say a little bit more about what you do, and then I'll talk about myself too?
Absolutely. So hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Bombard. I am a Senior Associate Director of Admissions at Lehigh University. We're located in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. If you're not familiar with Bethlehem, it's the city that makes marshmallow peeps. So if you've ever had a marshmallow peep, you've had a taste of Bethlehem. But Lehigh is a medium-sized, nationally ranked research university. We have about 5,500 undergraduate students. And as I mentioned, I've worked in the admissions office for a very, very long time, and essays and kind of the application process is one of my favorite things to talk about. So I'm very excited to be here today.
Yay! My name is Deb Ryan. I'm an independent educational consultant, and I have in Eastern North Carolina, but the vast majority of my students are actually in the Triangle, so the Cary, Raleigh, Durham area of North Carolina. I'm also the college advisor for a small private Christian school in Eastern North Carolina, and I have been an English teacher since I feel like the dawn of time. And so I've worked with students on their essays for decades, and this is my favorite part of the application process. So we'll get started.
So when you apply to colleges, they will often describe their process as holistic. And holistic essentially means that we are going to look at every single piece. The pieces of the puzzle may be different sizes, right? Some things may matter more than others, but all of the pieces are being considered. So as it says here on the slide, there's not going to be one thing that completely ruins your chances. Oh, I got one bad grade one time. For almost every college in the country, that will not be a disqualifying factor for you. But the things that you see listed here, the types of classes that you're in, what you spend your time outside of school pursuing, and to what level, are you a leader, are you a member, how long have you been doing it? All of these things are going to count and be important.
And we tonight are going to talk about three of the main, what we call narrative pieces of your application. And those are going to be the extracurricular activities, because we feel like that's a piece of what you get to control. The main essay, which is the larger 650 piece essay, that 650 word essay that you will be submitting into the Common App, and the supplemental essays as well. And we're really focusing primarily on the Common App tonight, because that's kind of a school that a lot of our students in the South will be the application process. But the advice that we give is going to be true for any essay that you have to write for scholarships or essays. So we'll just talk for a second about again, those pieces of the narrative. So as Sarah was discussing, colleges see lots of different pieces of information about you. There are a lot of numbers associated with your account. So GPA, test scores, class rank, if those are pieces of your application, those can be numbers that are associated with your application. The narrative piece is where you get to tell your story. And I think that's the piece that's so wonderful, because it's a piece you can control. The activities list is where you get to tell the story of how you've spent your time when you're not sitting in the classroom. The main essay is where you really get to have admissions officers understand you as a human being. Who are you? What values do you have? What matters to you? What experiences have you had that you are going to bring to that campus? And then the supplemental essays are, again, another piece of your story, because they are a way for you to tell colleges very specifically, why you're interested in their institution, why you're interested in their majors. they are going to have very college specific questions. And it's a way for you to say, here's who I will be if I get to come onto your campus. So all of those pieces sort of encompass your entire narrative in your application.
So the activities list may not be originally kind of what you would consider a part that you have a lot of control over. Obviously, you are choosing the kinds of activities that you pursue and what you love to do and what you've been doing for the past 4 years. But the way that you speak about the activities, the things that you include or don't include in the list, in the space that you are provided by the college or by the Common App, is really an opportunity for you to use every single opportunity to tell us something new. It's a way for you to maximize the application. And when we were originally putting this presentation together, Deb and I were talking about how students have few, but a number of opportunities to really share their own voice and their own take on what they've chosen to do and how they've spent their time. And so this is one way that we kind of both felt that students didn't utilize particularly well in every single case. And so we want to, and we'll talk in a few slides or so about ways to do this a little bit more. But the activities list doesn't simply need to be a list. You can provide short descriptions. You can provide a sense of the importance of your involvement. I was the president of the French club. All right, well, next year there's going to be another president of the French club, but were you the president of the French club who raised enough in a bake sale that every member of the French club got to go to Montreal for a trip, right? And that level of impact is going to be different. That's something that you could share with colleges that will really help us understand, oh, wow, this is more than just being a straightforward president of the French club.
Yeah. The titles are interesting, but they're so radically different from each school, and what students can do within each club, within each school, or within each sport can vary so much, I think, in applications, that it's really helpful to provide context. All of these pieces of your narrative provide context for admissions officers. So the main essay, again, it's my favorite part, because this is where you tell your story. I think sometimes students, and Sarah, I know you've seen this before, sometimes students really would rather write about someone else. It's very, very hard for this generation, I feel like, to write about themselves. They really love to take pictures. They're really great at taking selfies, not so much wanting to use I as a pronoun. I did this. This is some information about me. And so this is a chance for you to share your identity, your voice, your life story, the pieces of things that really matter to you. Essays are very often one of the highest, most important ranked sort of non-academic pieces of an application. So they do matter. And we'll talk about this later, but they do get read. Admissions officers do read them. I think sometimes students think like, why am I writing this and who am I writing it for? You're writing these for real people who, yeah, exactly, for Sarah, real people who want to know your story. I mean, that's truly, I mean, I've been blessed to meet so many admissions professionals, and they really do want to understand who you are and who you might be when you come on their campus. So there are real people reading these stories, and they do want to know, what matters to you. I think it's your chance to say, this is who I am.
And likewise, I love the supplemental essay, because that I know, or it should be very clear, that was written just for my institution. It's an opportunity for me to, when students choose their own essay, if we get 16,000 applications, we're getting 16,000 completely different essays, but we ask 2 identical supplemental questions. And so this is an opportunity for us to get to know you within a more deep Lehigh context. And obviously, I only am here representing Lehigh this evening, but every college that does a supplement is asking you questions that they think are important. And so it shows that you have taken the time to learn more about our community and what we offer. You've taken the time to picture yourself as a member of that community and how you can challenge us to be a better institution, and how we can challenge you to be a better person, a better thinker, a better, doctor, lawyer, engineer, anything. It gives us an opportunity to learn the kinds of things you're interested in. Very often a supplemental question will be, why this major or why this program within this institution? And it gives us another chance to evaluate your ability to write. Sometimes the essay is where students put all their eggs in that basket. They spend so much time on the essay, they leave the supplements till the very last minute, and the quality difference shows. We can see like, okay, they had a lot of help with this essay, and yikes, this supplement is kind of a mess. So it allows us to get to know you and how you're able to picture yourself as a Lehigh student or as a insert college here student, and how you might make our community better as well.
And I would just add, if there are any juniors on the call or 9th or 10th graders, I think sometimes students understand that there's going to be a big essay that they write for their applications, but they don't necessarily know that there are also going to be lots of little essays. If you apply to lots of different schools, they might each have 1, 2, or 3 smaller supplemental essays. And so knowing that ahead of time, I think can be incredibly helpful, so that you aren't hitting like right now, October, and going, wait, how many more do I need to write? So knowing that those are an important piece of the application and that they're coming, I think is important. That's one of the things my students have said quite a bit. And we just want to share, these are just 2 of the main applications. The Common App, that's the one we're really going to be showing tonight. The Coalition for College, the Coalition application. Many of you who use, if you have SCORE in your school, SCORE and the Coalition have joined forces. The University of California system has its own application. Cal State system has its own application. MIT, Georgetown, Rutgers, or some other schools that have their own applications. But the vast majority of students are going to be able to apply on the Common App or the Coalition for the schools of interest. And then I'll just talk about this piece too. So this is kind of, okay, in the Common App, where do I find all this? Like, where should I be looking to find these pieces? So within the Common App, so this right here, this is the starter page, the home page for the Common App. And then within the Common App, there are a variety of different tabs. The Common App section that's right here, this is the section where the colleges to which you apply will all get all the information that's in here in this section. So the education, the profile and family section are a lot of just demographic information. The education section is where you're going to be talking about your current year courses, your GPA, your class rank, if you have that in your school. The testing section is where you can submit your self-report, your AP, IB, SAT, ACT scores, any scores you have. And then the activity section, this is where you're going to be putting in your activities. And so one of the things to know about the activity section is you can only list 10 activities in the activity section. It's not 47. It's not 83. It's not all the clubs that you've ever joined in your entire life. It is your top 10 list. What's your top 10? And so I think that's important for students to understand too, is it's really starting to prioritize, again, what do I want to make sure colleges know I do? It's not all the things you do, it's your top 10 list. What are the most important things that you spend your time doing? And then the writing section, that is where you're going to be able to find the main essay. So the one that's the 650 words. There are also 2 additional questions in the writing section. They're called additional information. One is an additional information paragraph about COVID, and one is an additional information section that's basically like, is there anything else that is missing in your application that we should know? And so a lot of students will use that to write about grades that are maybe some interesting outliers that they feel like they need to explain, any situations that arose for them during their high school career that impacted sort of their academics or their ability to complete some things. And so those are those 2 other pieces of the writing section as well. Do you want to talk about this, the activity section and sort of the prioritization, I think, Sarah?
Absolutely. So one of the things that we wanted to make sure that we covered this evening is that when you list the activities, the instructions say that it should be in order of importance. So starting with the most important and then all the way down to number 10. Should you list 10 if you don't have 10? No, list the number that you have. But it should be listed in the way you want me to read it. So pretend I can only look at your top 3. Don't save the ones that are the most important to you for the bottom. One thing I'll also encourage you to do is to think about which activities really represent what you are passionate about, what you care about, and what, if you only got three, three things you would want me to know. Oftentimes students will mention summer programs that they do. Oh, I did this summer program for a week and it was on this college campus and it was great, but it happened one time. It's in an area completely unrelated to how you're applying to my school. And if I sat down and said, I'm going to talk to you for an hour about this, you'd be like, ugh, I don't want to talk about it for an hour. What is the thing you would want to talk about for an hour? Athletics is often something that students do multiple ways. Oh, I'll play soccer for my school. I'll play for a travel soccer team. I will, be involved in coaching soccer in some way, shape, or form. And so if you find yourself repeating, it's soccer, it's soccer, it's soccer, it's soccer. Or I did JV and I did varsity and I do club and I do a different club and I do a travel team and I do a selective team. Do you really want soccer to be 8 out of your 10? And can you find ways to combine it? Especially if you're not thinking, or if you're not planning on being a recruited athlete. And again, I'm only using soccer as an example. I've seen it with dance. I've seen it with cheer. I've seen it with music. I've seen it with volunteering. You don't have to list every single volunteering opportunity you do if that's going to take up 10. You can write volunteer and then list it in the description. If you have that many, maybe that's a good topic for an essay. But we want you to know that, and we're going to keep talking about this tonight. Every time you write something in here, it's an opportunity for you to share something new. So tell us what's important to you. How you list it is going to share how you value each thing that you do. Even if it's a super duper prestigious thing, if it's not the most important thing, if you working at Lowe's, or if you volunteering, or if you playing the saxophone and picking that up last month is the most important thing, then that's how you should do it. And that's what we want to see. Sometimes students will forget to write about family responsibilities, especially with COVID. So many students took on a lot more home responsibilities, picking up siblings, helping them with homework, cooking meals, doing laundry. I don't think you should list, doing your own laundry as an extracurricular activity. That's kind of an expectation. But if you have gone above and beyond, where you are really acting as another parent or acting as an adult in a house, that is absolutely something to add. And same thing with working. We have had students who list 2 extracurricular activities because one of them is having a 38-hour-a-week part-time job. We've had students who are the manager, like the acting manager of wherever they work. Mm-hmm. That is an activity, and you should list that, because if they only listed the second thing, which they did an hour or 2 a week, we'd say, well, what are you doing with all your time? You're a manager of a Taco Bell. Holy cow. So make sure that you are really thinking about your hours spent after school or before school and on weekends. Things that you just do for fun, you can sometimes list if you have a hobby or an activity that you're really passionate about, or something that you really, would love for us to know. That's great. But this is an opportunity for you to share bits of your humanity and bits of the things that you care about, where I can start to build a more 3-dimensional model of you as a human and not just a student, in my mind.
Mm-hmm. So then these are the main essay topics. I love when I hear the myths that go around about college admissions, which is that, one of these is actually secretly better than any of the others. And you should never choose number 7. And number 2 is definitely the one that you should write. There's just no, whichever one you choose is great. Number 7 is great because a lot of students, which is the share an essay on any topic of your choice, is great because a lot of students, what they write about overlaps 2 or 3 of these different sort of questions, the prompts. The key ingredient is to think about how you're answering these questions, because these are not superficial questions. They are really asking you to consider who you are, how you've become that person. If you read the questions, what prompted your thinking? How have things motivated you? How have you been impacted? How have you been captivated? There's a lot of whys and hows in these questions. And so it's really trying to get much more beyond the superficial level of self-reflection. And so that's why, really taking the time to, and we're going to talk in a minute about brainstorming, but really taking the time to think about who you are and how you've become the person that you are. And the piece that I love so much is when students are thinking about who the person that they want to become and how college is going to help them become that person, and the values that are integral to their sort of perspective on the world, and what really matters to them. So these questions are I think it's really helpful for students to read all of the question topics, because it's very helpful for you to see they are asking you to dig deep. Who are you? And not, I love, Sarah, your idea of, what do you want to talk to me about for an hour? It's not, people sometimes talk about doing an elevator pitch. This is not an elevator pitch at all. This is not tell me in 2 minutes something that's important to you. This is really digging deep and thinking about your life experience and who you are and who you've become and who you want to be. And I love these so much.
So how do you even start? Oh my gosh, what a daunting task you have in front of you to write this between 250. And if it's not 250, you have to keep writing to 650. And if it's past 650, it cuts it off and nobody can ever read it. How do you even start? Well, just start with a blank piece of paper. And oh my gosh, how old are we that we say start with a blank piece of paper? But start with a blank notes app, start with a blank Google Doc, start with a blank voice memo, start with a blank, TikTok screen, and think about what you would want me, somebody who is like me, if you want to apply to Lehigh, maybe it is actually me as a person, but maybe it's just somebody like me who works in an admissions office in in an institution that's going to look at your essay, that's going to consider it as part of the admissions process, which is most of them. But tell me, what you care about. And that's a really big question. And I often think, well, how would I answer that if I had to do this again? Well, I've already done it. But how would I do this again, with who I am now? Who are you? I'm an animal lover. I am very passionate about, people taking care of pets and animals and treating them respectfully. And that's something that's really important to me. I'm a mom, and I wouldn't have written that when I was applying to college the first time, but that's really important to who I am now. I'm a daughter. I'm a daughter of somebody, and that's really important. And that was really important to me then. And so just think about parts of your identity. What are you proud of and why? And maybe it is something that happened to you in high school. Maybe it's learning English. I have a lot of students who talk to me about how they came to school and they didn't necessarily speak the language because they were raised in a more kind of multilingual family. Okay, that's something to be proud of. Again, these don't have to end up being your essay topics, but this is to help you start brainstorming, to start getting those layers peeled back so that you can figure out what it is you want to share. What are values that are important to you? Do you value social justice? Do you value religion? Do you value freedom of speech? Do you value chocolate? I don't know, whatever it is that it might be really important to you. What would you share? Or are you thinking, that doesn't really represent me? Okay, move on. Is there a moment that's really mattered to you? Is there like a life-changing moment? And some people have them and some people don't. So if you're sitting there and you're thinking, yeah, actually there is, great. If there's not, and you're like, no, every day is pretty solid, pretty good. Okay, fine. That's totally fine. And again, a lot of these can be like interpreted in a lot of different ways. So a moment that has mattered to you, maybe that's losing somebody that you love, or maybe that's a moment of struggle, but maybe it's a moment of incredible success. Maybe it's, that game winning moment, or the moment that you found out you were going to be able to do something that you wanted to do. The moment you got your driver's license. It can be positive or negative, and it's up to you to kind of think of these. Do you have a favorite person to be with? And this is a great topic to get started thinking about. It can be dangerous to write about because you might start writing about that person. But if you keep the focus to you and why you like to spend time with that person, what is it about that person? Is it the nature of your relationship? Is it their personality? Is it anything that has happened in the past with them that has led to this point that you could share with us? Have you had an obstacle? Have you overcome it, and what did you learn? Everybody thinks they have to write an overcome essay, that you've overcome something. And sometimes people do it really well. Sometimes people write about overcoming something, especially in the failure. They can talk about a time that you failed at something. It's not really a failure. You didn't really overcome it. Like, oh, one time I forgot to bring lunch to school and I was really hungry. And so now I always have $3 in my pocket. It's not very meaty. It's not particularly life-changing. But if you have something that you have overcome and you truly have overcome it, not something that you're still going through, that you're still going to be demonstrating elsewhere that it is a point of struggle, but you can write about something like that, or that might be something that you really want to share in your essay. Or maybe you say, no, I don't want that to really be my defining moment. I want to write about that in the additional information section. That can be a great place to put that. What do you worry about? What do you get excited about, right? These are kind of two sides of a coin. Sometimes it's the same thing. I'm really worried about climate change, and I'm excited about pursuing a career where I can work toward changing that. I can work toward improving that. Just put stuff down. And I know there are some of you, and parents, you can type, amen in the chat, but some of you are going to sit there and you're going to say, I'm just going to write it right when it's due because I do my best work under pressure. I don't need to revise it. I'm a good writer. I like the pressure of the deadline. That's nonsense. You are absolutely 150% going to write a better essay if you have thought of some of these topics, if you've started writing them and realized, wow, I've hit a roadblock 25 words in. I've already said all that needs to be said, or I don't want to talk about this anymore. Get some of these out, brain dump it, see which ones you're actually excited to write about and which ones you want to keep going with. And that might tell you that you have hit on a good essay topic.
You get an amen from me. 100%. And then these are, we'll just talk about these really quickly too. These are some really great questions. Favorite, least favorite things. The other thing that I would say is answering a lot of these brainstorming questions and going through this process will also in the end help you with your supplemental essays. So this is one of the beautiful things about doing really great brainstorming, is that then it gives you so many things to draw from when you are writing your main essay, when you're writing your supplemental essays. You've already written a lot of those pieces. You've already thought about a lot of those pieces. And I think the questions here that are important is how have things, it's the why and the how. How have things changed your life? How have they demonstrated your personality? Why would these things be included? If you were to write your biography, why those things in particular? How did they change you? It's the whys and the hows that I think are incredibly, incredibly important. And so I love these questions as well, Sarah. These are just brilliant.
And one thing I will add, it is also temporally important, right? So limiting it to the last 3 years, limiting it to high school can be really challenging. But I have a lot of students who write to me about things that happened in elementary school, things that happened to them as a very young child. And I sit there and I think, that's the most recent important thing that happened to you? Or that was so unbelievably influential? And sometimes the answer is yes. But I would much rather hear about what you're like now than what you were like in kindergarten or what you were like in even middle school, or something that happened to you, very early on in your life. It may have been very formative. It may have been very interesting and engaging. It may be a great story, but I don't know that I would be able to pinpoint that to you as a near adult. So try to think of things that are, you can refer back to things that happened before, but try to keep it kind of high school age stuff.
One of the things I would say I've always told students as well is when they write when they get to their final draft, if they were to leave it without their name on it on a table in a room, and someone picked it up, if they read it, would they be able to say, oh, hey, you dropped your essay, this is yours? Because it's so much, obviously, a piece of who they are. No one else could have written this essay. And so I think sometimes that can be the challenge too, when people are writing about I do definitely have some students who had some very major things happen in their childhood that have continued to impact them. So then that makes a lot of sense to write about. But it's would someone recognize this as you? I think is a really important sort of qualifier for essays, and it can be a really good indicator of whether or not it's actually so personal to you, it's helping someone understand who you are. And that just, yeah, this is not about the stuff that you've done. This is about the who, the what you care about. And one of the things, and Sarah, I would love to hear your thoughts too about great essays that you've read. But one of the ways to think about approaching the structure of the essay is to tell a story at the beginning and then give the context for that story. So how did you get to the point of that story? The biggest challenge, the biggest piece is the meaning. How did that story impact your life? Who are you today because of it? Who are you going to be when you walk on campus? What lessons have you learned? The meaning piece is really important. So if you think about some of the best essays that you remember, what are some of those, like what's some of the structure of those essays? And what do you feel like you learned about students?
Absolutely. I've been doing this for 15 years. I read about 1,000 applications a year. So that's a lot of essays, and most of them just kind of drift through. Some of them stand out for being very big missed opportunities, not very well done. And then some of them stand out as being fantastic. And some of the most fantastic ones, that story, which you actually want to write the whole essay about, is one sentence or two sentences that tee everything up, and then the remainder of that essay is an explanation. So I'll give you an example. One of my favorite essays of all time is a student who wrote about how she lives in a house with just her mom. So she's an only child and it's a single parent. And they started this tradition of when she kind of hit high school, that every day, or maybe it wasn't every day, it was every Friday. See, it doesn't matter. The detail is kind of irrelevant. That they would walk when the mom got home from work and the daughter was home from school. They would walk around their neighborhood, and these moments of connection were something that she was really going to miss in college. And just the introspection, the thought. So now I know a little bit more about her personal life, which I didn't necessarily quite understand from the kind of background information. The fact that her mom is this incredibly important person in her life, the fact that they make the time to do this, they talk about all these things. She shared some of the things that they talked about. She was able to share what it meant to her to do it and why she still wanted to go away to college, even though she was going to miss this.
Mm-hmm.
Having this future, having these things happen to her in college and have these opportunities was also important. And although she mentioned leaving it, oh my God, so many, it was just beautifully written, but it was a great way to get to know this person. And, when I see this young woman walk in with the mom, I'm like, I know these two, I feel like I've met them and I can see them now. I can picture them clearly walking around, their neighborhood and chatting and enjoying these last few moments living under the same roof together. Like, oh, right in the heart. And then more lightheartedly, another young lady wrote about her personality and how it reflects her love of cheese. She loves cheese. Cheese is her favorite food, and she sees herself, if she had to define herself in terms of cheese, these are the cheeses she would choose and why. And it just really tickled me because I thought, wow, what a unique, I would never think of that. And yet this young lady was like, absolutely, this is a great example of who I am. A little quirky, right? So kind of a quirky choice, but very genuine. She's talking about these cheeses I've never heard of. And I'm like, wow, you really do know about cheese. This is fantastic. So those are just two kind of opposite ends. Like one was way more humorous and way more unique to that person's personality and how that was. And then one was a lot more serious and it, brought some tears to my eyes and, shared something very deep in a very different way.
Mm-hmm. I think too, both of those are great examples because I think sometimes students feel like, I've never rescued someone from a burning car. I've never lifted a cow, out of a well. I never saved an old lady from falling into a lake. Like it does not have to be that you cured cancer or that you solved, global warming. Like it's not that you can be the smaller moments. It's truly what matters to you, and what matters to you is not going to be the same thing that matters to anybody else. And so I love both of those examples so much because they're not ginormous world shaking moments necessarily for those students. They're really, this is who I am, which I just think is so fantastic. And then I love your things to avoid. So good.
Yeah. So, if you fall asleep after this slide, we'll probably have covered most of what you need to know. But these are just some somewhat glib, but all very truthful things to avoid. So the first rule is do not share anything that you do not want your grandmother to know. Pretend I'm your grandmother, pretend she's going to proofread it. If she's not with us anymore, then, surrogate, grandparent, what have you. But some of the topics are just not appropriate, things that you might do after prom with a person that you are interested in, activities that might be legal in some states that are not legal in all 50 states yet. Just things that, when I look at them, I think, gosh, did your parent proofread this? Did any adult see this? Because I'm a little worried if they did and still said, good job. Avoid writing about other people. Sometimes it's unavoidable because you say, yes, my mom and I take this walk, and that's okay. But really think about whether you are writing more about that other person than you. I see this a lot with essays that are written about, people who are influential and, my dad did this, my grandfather, they came to this country, he started this business, she, single-handedly, raised me, and it's all wonderful, but it isn't you. It is not your story. You may have had a role in it. You can talk about your feelings, immigrating or moving to a different place, or going through a divorce or what have you, but you can't tell me everything about that situation through their eyes, because it's just going to be an essay that's barely about you. Try not to write about particularly controversial or edgy topics. Sometimes you think, oh, well, you'll remember me if I write something edgy, and I will, but it may not be for a good reason. Really, we try to talk about cocktail party, kind of dinner party topics. Try to stay away from politics, try to stay away from religion, try to stay away from, kind of hot button debate things. There's a lot of them, right, going on. And if that is something that you say, absolutely not, this is something I care so much about, I have to write my essay about it, then that is completely fine. Just know that sometimes the real human person that is reading it might struggle with that, and your essay might have to go through a bit of a longer review process. It might have to go to a committee because the person just isn't quite sure how to process all of that. Writing about writing is when you write an essay about writing the essay. Here I sit in my office or in my room, and I stared down at the walls surrounding me with my trophy. Yes, my trophy. I'm a chess team trophy. And yes, that's great. And it's really boring. So if you're going to write about writing, I wouldn't recommend it. Similar with poetry. If you love to write poetry, fantastic. If you want to submit some poems in your additional information, or if you would like your, English teacher to write a recommendation for you and talk about how much you love poetry and what a great poet you are, fantastic. I hate poetry, and I will try not to let my own personal bias, negatively impact your application, but it's not your personal poem, it's your personal statement, it's your personal essay. So it shouldn't really be in poem format. Similarly, I'll say not a lot of dialogue. When I see it looks like a screenplay and there's and then she said this, and then I was like, no, and then she said this, and then I was like, okay. It wastes a lot of space, it wastes a lot of time. And so I don't recommend that either. Please don't lie. Everybody wants themselves to sound great, and you can, maybe embellish a little bit, or you can make it sound, really good and really, reflect well on you. But if you straight up lie, that's very bad. And frankly, we were talking about preparing this session, and later on, I think there's a slide that's can the essay really change your decision? And really, it's only if you lie. I had a student write an essay that was a situation that he says he was in, and it was literally unbelievable. And if it had happened, it would have been in the news. And so when I called the counselor and I said, hey, did you hear this? And she said, what? I thought, okay, well, there's no way that this happened for real. And this is now a creative writing piece. And it's a lie. And he held it out as being true. And I said, absolutely not. So that one got a long discussion committee, but it was not a good outcome. Sesquipedalian is a big word that means big words. And so I am very proud of my vocabulary. I've read a lot of books. I love vocab. It was one of my favorite things to do in high school. I know a lot of words. And if I have to look up your word, it's probably too big of a word. There are some technical terms that sometimes students throw in. Again, this is not meant to be a research paper. This is not meant to prove how much you know about, different scientific or engineering terms. But if you're using the thesaurus to just jazz it up, be very judicious in your use of the thesaurus. Please don't write that you hate essays. Every year we get a couple that are like, this is just another way of big education, man, hold me down. And it's like, okay, yes, well, again, if that is the thing that you want to talk about more than anything else in the world, so be it. But essays about how you hate essays, it's a tough read. It's a tough read.
Particularly when
Um,
you're applying to an institution where you're going to have to do a lot of essays. Like in college,
yeah,
you're going to have to write. So saying I don't like writing is not a great way to get started
yeah.
on that path. Yeah.
And like, even if you hate it, treat yourself to something nice
Right.
when you've done it. But don't make that labor like be the entire topic. It's a tough read, right? It's, you want me to get hooked in and want to finish your essay. If I am slogging through it, it probably means that you're writing about something that you don't actually want to be writing about. And I'm sure there's something that you would actually want to write about. You can talk about anything, figure that thing out, and then write about that, because then I'll be excited to read it. And then this is one that parents do. So parents in the audience, when you write the essays for your students, this is the one that you default to, which is where you rehash everything that we already knew. Like, yes, and as the captain of the lacrosse team, I've learned discipline, and as the, vice president of my class, I've learned tenacity, and as this, I've learned this, and these are all the values that are important to me, but I already knew all that stuff about you. And then you've just thrown in some adjectives, which you may have used the thesaurus for, and so now we're just kind of, it's a big hodgepodge. So every opportunity that you have to put something in your application is a time for you to share something new, or if we've already heard a little bit about it, it's a time for a deep dive, right? So you just re-sharing, like, and I learned this from that, and this from that, and this from that. I've already gotten those, like, kind of like skipping stone level bits of information. Dive deeply, throw that stone into the pond. Tell me all about what being vice president of your class means to you and why it's important. Really dive in if that's what you want to talk about. But keeping everything at a high level is it going to change your admissions decision? Probably not, but it's not going to make us learn anything more about you than we already had learned. And when we only have a certain amount of time for each application, it's just not a good use of your time writing it and our time reading it.
And I think here, just other general notes, if you're bored writing it, the person who's reading it is also going to be bored. So that's again why the brain dumps are super important. I think that getting lots of ideas out first and seeing which one, it's kind of like throwing spaghetti at a wall, which piece sticks, I think is really important. The question, who else could write this essay? Absolutely, your first draft is not going to be your final draft ever. Please don't let it be ever. Start early, write a lot. The more you write, the more, even if it, and I love the idea of the brain dump. The other image I use for my students is, if you've ever watched someone make a clay pot, the first thing they do is they take a giant lump of clay, and it's ugly and it's got pieces sticking out all over the place, and they throw it on a wheel and it makes a great sound. It goes whack. It's terrible looking. It looks horrible. And then they shape it. But the first is the ugly, right? The first is the dump of the just pieces everywhere and stuff's flying off. That's what we want, is that initial just put everything in there and then see what we can shape it into. Please, 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 please do not pay someone to write your essay. It defeats the entire purpose of you landing at the institution where you are supposed to be. If someone else writes your essay for you, then they should go to that college, not you, because it's not your authentic voice. And I think sometimes, so I'm an independent educational consultant. I work with students and on their applications. I would never in a million, billion, jillion years write an essay for a student. Anyone who is ethical would never do that. So please just don't engage with that in any way ever. And in the applications, you very often have to sign an honor code, which is that you have, you will abide by an institution's honor code. The Common App also has affirmations in it that say, this is my work, I have completed this application. So you're violating all sorts of things in terms of honor, which is not the way you want to start your college admissions process or your journey to college. So please don't.
And those checkboxes are serious. That
Yeah.
is a reason that we will rescind your decision. If there is any reason we think that something you put in there or somebody else put in there and you said that it was you, we have had people where the parents accidentally signed, or the student, excuse me, the student accidentally signed the parent's name to submit it. And so it comes through and it says, oh, this is from Sarah Bombard, but it's signed, Deb Bombard. It's a huge deal. And you're like, it's not a big deal. It really, really is, because then we don't know that we can trust anything in it. So really treat this as an ethical process. I know there's all stories out there about unethical admissions and back doors and side doors and whatnot, but for you should be holding yourself out there as a genuine person and telling us about your authentic self. And if you aren't admitted to a school, then then so be it. And if you are, then you'll know you did it, and they know who you are, and they think, wow, this person will be a really amazing fit on our campus, and we want them there.
Yeah. And I would just add to that too. I tell my students that if they're not admitted to a school, that's not where they're supposed to be. And that school doesn't get the blessing of having them there. So the schools that embrace you, that want you to be there, that's where they get the blessing of having you. But that only works if you are your authentic self in the entirety of your application. So, and also just again, parents, please just know, it is, and I've been reading essays since so long, I'm so old. I don't know how to quantify, but the second a 45-year-old person's voice comes into an essay, it is so abundantly clear that there's a 45-year-old's voice or a 50-year-old's voice or a 33-year-old's, however your parents are, that there is an adult voice that has inserted itself into an application, into an essay. It's just so apparent. A 17-year-old writes like a 17-year-old. And so again, the authenticity really, really matters. So. And then these are just great places to see examples, I think. So Johns Hopkins, Connecticut College, there are also lots of other colleges. So I'm not sure if Lehigh has a page like this. They might, I didn't include it on the slide.
We have a couple of recorded sessions on our YouTube page, and also you can link to it from our main admissions page with tips and tricks for our supplements for, and again, it's for us, right? But the essay, I do that one. So if you want another dose of my version of essays, but we talk about, activities lists and supplements. So it's a little bit more geared for us and not so much general advice, but the institutions you see here can speak to their own processes. And then I'm sure you'll hear a lot of similar advice across the board, and you can internalize that to make sense for you.
And then the other resource that I would say is really massively important for students to know about is my colleague, Ethan Sawyer, who is known as the College Essay Guy. He is brilliant and also incredibly generous with information. And his website, again, it's called the College Essay Guy. He has how to brainstorm, how to write your essay, essay examples, how to write supplements, very school-specific supplemental essay advice. It's just phenomenal. It's just, I think, one of the best resources out there. So, but many colleges will also have, here's how to write our supplement, here's how to respond to us. So let's just spend a little bit of time on the supplemental essays. And so again, where you would find those in the Common App is within each college's specific section in the My Colleges section. Sometimes they put it under something called a writing supplement. Sometimes it's included in their questions. They're not always easy to find. So that again is why it's really important to start early with your applications and start answering things and clicking on tabs, because the supplemental essay boxes sometimes appear only after you have answered a question. And so that can be sometimes one of the challenges as well, is making sure you've seen all of the essay prompts. And so typically it's going to look like, what you're going to see is a box that looks like this. So if you see a box that looks like this in an application, that's typically going to be a supplemental essay question. Yeah, do you want to talk about these two questions?
Yeah.
And what are your supplemental essay questions, Sarah?
We have a why Lehigh. Why did you choose to apply, and what encouraged you to look at us, I think, in the first place, or how did you hear of us in the first place? And the second is a question about being a part of a community. And all of our students are a part of a community. We challenge you to think about a community that you would like to see improvements in, and what you would change to make that community more equitable for all people in it, regardless of their background. So those are our, two questions. We are a school that is interested in having a small student body. So we really want to make sure that the students on our campus are excited to be there. They know what they're getting into. They're excited. They've done their research. We give you an opportunity to demonstrate that. We want to know that you want to improve Lehigh. You want to come and make your mark on who we are. And so that's kind of the nature of the first question. Each college's why that college will be different. And so I can pinpoint a reused why college at 500 paces. We have ours phrased in a particular way. It is not why Lehigh. So there are questions like, how did you hear of us and why did you apply? Did you choose to apply because of our graduation rate? Maybe. Did you choose to apply because of our, Cheese Appreciation Society? Maybe if you're that one young lady, you did. But, there are sometimes things that indicate to me that you have written a Mad Lib why college, where you plug in the name. This has been demonstrated on many occasions when you forget to change the name. And our record is 4. So the record is 4 different colleges in one Y Lehigh. It should be one college and it should be Lehigh. Maybe you could get away with like kind of contrasting us to another school, but this was like, I can't wait to be in X city, which was not our city. And, I love the campus of Y University. And I think, your biology department led by so-and-so. We're like, ugh. So make sure that you are really writing it purposefully for each school. And probably the things that attract you to each individual school. Like, yeah, we all have the major you want, probably similar size, or maybe not. Maybe there are some size differences, maybe like location, but what are those things that you have learned about in all of the research you've done about these colleges that makes you interested? And then tell us those things. Usually they're relatively short answers. They're not another full essay. So you don't need to write 650 words. It might be, 300 or fewer.
Yeah.
And another very common one about why you chose your major. This is another area of missed opportunity for students, especially if you are applying more strategically than honestly. If you are like, okay, well, at this school, I'm going to apply to this program or this college because I know the acceptance rate is higher, or I think I have a better shot at getting admitted. And so I'm going to apply to that one. But then your whole why did you choose your major or program is about something completely different. That is a big red flag. So make sure that you are talking genuinely about what you want to study. Talk genuinely about, what you hope to do with it, what you have done already that makes you know that it is something of interest to you. And, if you want to drop some specific details for that college, that's also probably a pretty good piece of advice. Is like, if you are being asked by school X about why you want to study a specific area, do some research about studying that area at school X and drop some of those details in. It really shows that you have put the effort in to make it specific for us, and you're not going to send that one out for everywhere else.
Yeah, these essays should not be interchangeable. And that's really this piece. I'm going to go through the last few slides pretty quickly so we can get to some of the questions. But I think the other key piece of the why college essay is don't tell the admissions folks what they know about their school, because they literally, that's what they do all day is to tell people information about their school. So when students are writing an essay that's like, well, your school has the number 7 ranked this, or you have this student to faculty ratio, or you have this many students at your institution, they know, like, it's literally like ingrained in their brain because they tell people that all day during admissions sessions. Please don't tell people what they already know. If a school is in the mountains, don't tell them that they're in the mountains. They know, they literally look at them. Tell them why you want to be at that institution, what matters to you. And I think that the homework piece is so important. Do your research, but you should be doing your research anyway. You shouldn't be picking colleges out of a hat, because then you're not going to, again, land where you're supposed to be. You should be really thinking about what experience is it that you want to have. I just want to show these really quickly just to see that there are some schools that have kind of different little pieces. So University of California is a great example. So if you're applying to the University of California system, they have, they do not use again, they have their own separate application, and you would respond to 4 of these 8 personal insight questions, but they are asking many of the same deep, insightful, who are you, how have you come to be that person, kinds of prompts. And then Virginia Tech, for example, there are some institutions that will not read your main essay. Their supplemental essays are really the things that are most important to them. So just to see that, again, the range of what you might be seeing when you're applying can be very radically different. And again, just more resources, I think, for folks to say, you know, colleges are going to have, like Lehigh does, there's going to be videos on their website, there's going to be pieces on their web pages. How should you write these essays? And then, of course, College Essay Guy, who's just the best. And then we'll just talk about these really quickly, Sarah, and then we'll just get into the questions really fast. So we want to make sure we respect people's time.
Absolutely. And I think we've covered these, but just to reiterate, we look for you. We look for it to be a human 17-year-old with growth ahead of them and growth behind them and an interesting story, because all of you have interesting stories. It doesn't have to be heartbreaking. It doesn't have to be world changing. It could just be that you really like cheese, and that's fine, but we want to know who you are. Yeah, we do really read all the essays. We really do. You know, I'm speaking for myself and my institution. I can speak for many of our peer institutions. I can't speak for every college, but generally, if a college isn't going to read your essay, they're not going to require one. So they just won't even bother asking you to submit something. Has there ever been a time when a student, when the essay was the deciding factor? Very rarely, right? So picture it like a bell curve. There's going to be some at the very tippy top that I remember for years. There's going to be some at the bottom where they are disqualifying, and mostly it is incredibly poorly written. Sometimes we think intentionally so, or it is straight up false. It is incorrect. It is fictitious. It is a lie. But the ones in the middle aren't going to sway us any more than any other piece of the application might, like grades. Have we changed our mind about a student's application? Yeah. You know, and sometimes when we're looking at a transcript and thinking, okay, this is fine, we read the essay and we think, oh, wow, there's so much more to the student than their transcript shows. Or sometimes it's, you know, wow, you know, this is a really great student, but they just are really one-dimensional, and I don't see them as a thriving member of such an active and dynamic community. I really think they would be better at a different type of school. And what carries more weight? The personal statement or the supplemental? It depends. And I hate to say it depends, but you know, a really out of the park, fantastic why Lehigh can outshine a pretty standard essay, and a really fantastic essay can sometimes be the thing that keeps you hanging on, even if your why Lehigh is just a little bit generic and vague. So they both play a role. It's holistic. Every piece counts.
Yep. And I think that's the key. That's really important. So I'm going to stop sharing now, but let's just get into some of the questions. And I'm actually going to start just at the bottom, because I think this is important. Isn't it common that people hire application essay coaches to help proofread essays, recommend changes, coaches that are familiar with the college application process? Yes. And that is that's actually, you know, part of what I do with my clients is I work with them on their essays. I never write any piece of their essay. I think that's the important piece to understand. There's a big difference there. So I can definitely take a look at what students have written. I can suggest changes. I ask them lots of questions. Why did you, that's the why and the how questions that I ask them. How did you do this? Why did you do this? How did it impact you? But I would never, ever in a million years write any piece of my student's application. And so that's the big difference there. Yes, please. And students should have other people read their essays, whether it's their English teacher or another adult they trust. Please have other people take a look at it, but never have someone else write a piece of it. That's the big difference there.
You don't see coaches playing.
Yep, really great. I love that. I'm totally stealing it. It's great.
They used to, but they don't. They're not playing now.
Yeah. What would you like to see in the additional information section? Sarah, do you want to talk about that piece really quickly?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you have something additional to add, if you are seeing that as like, ooh, another place to, it's not meant to be another writing opportunity, really, like changes in high school. If there was an extended illness, I've had students write, I had mono in 10th grade and it was really rough and I missed a lot of school. Changes in home life situations. You know, the COVID one is separate, and I'll talk about that in a second, but really like significant things that you feel we should know about. Not like, oh, I was elected this and I didn't have space to write it because I already had 10 and I want to list 15 more things. More like kind of significant life altering illnesses, changes in situation that you think they should probably know a little bit more about that. With the COVID, again, try to only write about these when you have had something that is out of the norm. So if you're like, yes, my school went virtual, like, absolutely. so did everybody else. And that's not meaning to say that it didn't impact you, because of course it did. It impacted everybody differently. But really, COVID meant both parents lost work. It meant that you had a first responder in your family and they moved out, and they had to live separately. Really big. That's the reason why you changed schools. It's things that are really significant. And I think those are great questions to talk to your parents or whoever's like kind of the adult at home, or a school counselor if you have one that you have a relationship with, and say, is this something I should be writing about, or does it not matter? And they'll give you good guidance.
Yeah. Another question, I heard you shouldn't write your essay about a person, but there was a person that completely changed my life, turned it around. Should I still not write about it? I think, no, you can still write about that person, but they are not applying to college. You are applying to college. So a lot of times people, my students a lot of times want to write about grandpas. I'm not sure why. There's a theme there. There's a lot of grandpa essays. And I'm like, I imagine that your grandpa is a rock star. However, grandpa is not applying to college right now. You are applying to college. So we want to ensure that the story ends up being about you. Who are you because of grandpa? But really, who are you going to be on campus? And they will be so excited to have grandpa visit, but who are you going to be on their campus? So I think that's one of the other big things. Sarah, can you tackle that? Do admissions officers read every essay submitted or divide and conquer?
Yeah, well, I read all of them from my territory. So every college does it differently. Sometimes a person will read it based on, a program or a major or a college within the university that you apply to. We divide ours based on geography. And so I work with Georgia, Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee. So if you apply from those states, I'm reading your essay. In our office, it's always seen by multiple eyes. So there may not be another person fully reading your essay as closely as I have, but you will be, kind of presented to a group of people. And so my notes about your essay will be seen by others. That depends on each college, and you are welcome to ask that question of your admissions advisors, like, how do you assign the applications? But not all 20 of myself and my colleagues will read every single application's essay, because that would just, process takes long enough as it is.
Yeah. For the essay prompts, does it need to be clear what prompt you're writing about? And could you combine a few prompts? Yeah. And that's kind of the point of the seventh prompt for the Common App, which is share an essay on a topic of your choice, which is a lot of times students, it's not clearly just an obstacle essay or just a background essay. And so that's why 7 is a great choice for that. So yes, you can absolutely combine some of the pieces of the different prompts. And so I think that's really important. A question just disappeared, but I just want to make sure people know this session will be recorded. All SACAC workshops are recorded and they're on the page where you registered. They're a phenomenal resource, and everything on the that has to do with college admissions gets covered in here. So I just want to make sure people know to go back to that page. And then Sarah, can you end us up with the athletic injury question? Is that really a bad idea to choose this as an option?
There's no such thing as a bad topic, except, and we discussed this ahead of time, bodily fluids. Never. There should never be any bodily fluid. So sometimes the sports injury ones, you get bloody, you get gross, you're talking about the MCL, the ACL. I don't want to pass out when I'm reading your sports injury. Again, if your essay, if you want to conceive of it this way, that is what, if I have an opportunity to sit down with you at a Starbucks and talk to you for 30 minutes, that is what you have chosen to talk to me about. Do you want to talk to me about your sports injury for 30 minutes? And maybe you do. But if you're thinking to yourself, no, I'm kind of over it. I have overcome this thing. It's in the past. It doesn't define me. It happened and it's over. Or I don't have 30 minutes of content that doesn't involve bodily fluids, then that is maybe not the best topic. So, the sports essay, the summer camp, the big game, the running for a position in school, those are all very common topics. They can be done incredibly well, incredibly poignantly. They can also be very boring and be more stories. And I just get the story. You walk me through, oh, I got hurt and then I did rehab and then it didn't get better. And then I went to see a surgeon and then they fixed it. And then I got back and then I played. Ta-da. But I haven't learned about you. Mm-hmm. I've learned about the recovery process from an ankle injury. Mm-hmm. So, again, I can't say like, that's a bad topic and you should never write about it, because there really aren't those necessarily. It really will take you to sit and think and ruminate and introspect about whether this is the most important thing that you want to talk about, and whether I'm going to walk away learning something new about you after I finish that essay. And that goes for any topic,
Yeah.
including ones about grandpas.
Yeah, the meaning piece. What is the meaning? The what, the how, the why. The meaning piece, I think, is the thing. If you want to think about what you want to get across in your applications, you know, who are you and how did you get to that place? Sarah, final thoughts about essays overall?
They're so much fun. They're so much fun for us, and the moments where students walk into the building and I immediately think I know who that is are the best part of my job. Really being able to get to know these incredibly interesting, fun, funky, cool students, and hoping that they come and they spend 4 years, you know, at my institution, and then seeing how they leave and they walk across that stage, more grown up and changed and different, and how we as a university have changed and become more different because of their influence, is like, that's why I've been doing what I do. So essays are a big part of that, and I really appreciate you all for coming out and learning more about it and caring enough about your admissions process to take an hour and 6 minutes to hear more about the impact of the essays and how to really do a great job. And I'm sure now you all will. Easy peasy. How about you? Last thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's my favorite piece because I feel like it's the chance for students to say who they are and to think, for some of them in their first time in their lives, about, you know, those really deep concepts. I typically have my students close their eyes before they submit their applications, and I read their essays to them, and I almost always cry. And that is because it's just been that journey. So when you take that journey, you have to think about it. It's not, you know, going to the Quickie Mart. It is a journey to get to that point of really reading that essay. And that's the piece that I think is just so beautiful, is when and it can be a funny essay or a meaningful essay or you know, sports, whatever essay it is, it's that journey that they've gotten to say, this is who I am, that I think is beautiful. So thank you all so much again for being here with us tonight. Please check out the other workshops that are on the SACAC website. And we will see you all again sometime soon. Have a great week and good luck with your applications.